Philosophical questions. Okay. Fun part. Who helped you become the person you are today?
Well, you know, I really have to give first credit to my parents. They neither of them had much formal education. My mother had to leave school at the age of 12 to keep house for a family when her mother died. And my father's father forced him to drop out of high school because he was supposed to come home and work on the farm so that his father could sit on the front porch in a rocking chair. Well, that was the expectation in those days. That's what farmers had sons for. So he had to do that. But they certainly valued education, and it showed up in different ways. My father wasn't very expressive on these matters, but he showed it by doing the morning chores so I could stay in and write and study or practice the piano. My mother was continually asking me about what I'd learned in school. And this was not the usual middle-class parent monitoring whether the school's doing its job. She really wanted to learn those things herself. And if indeed I have some skill in making ideas accessible to people, I think I learned that there because she wanted to know what I had learned. And it had to be done verbally and, you know, in fairly simple terms. So, you know, I think they were a very important influence. My brother and my sister and I were the first three people for a long time to ever go to university. And my brother was the pioneer there. By the time I and my sister came along, it was taken for granted. There was never the slightest doubt that we would do that.
What inspires you?
Well, I don't inspire easily. I think it's marvelous things that little kids do.
I like that answer. What do you find uninspiring?
Oh, ontology. That's when I come upon the word ontology in an article, that's a signal to me to quit reading. and I do. There are a few other words in that category too. It's just that ontology happens to be one of the hottest of them at present.
That leads right into the next question. What is your favorite word? We know it's not ontology.
My favorite word? Oh, gee. Help me out, Marlene. What's my favorite word?
Marlene?
Knowledge.
Well, I'm really big on knowledge, and it's not because I have so much of it.
Oh, sure.
People get fascinated with the things they don't have, you know. And, yeah, knowledge is getting a very bad rap now, but here we are in the knowledge age, and the advanced thinkers are all abandoning knowledge. It's really pretty pathetic. But I'll get into that in my words of wisdom, so I'm going to drop that.
Okay, sounds good. What profession other than your own would you have liked to attempt?
Well, you know, if we'd had a better guidance counselor at the high school where I went, I would have learned that psychology, there's more to it, or it's not just doing psychotherapy, that there's all kinds of things psychologists do. And I believe I would have gone into that field. I don't think I would have ended up that much different, but it would have been a different disciplinary route. Yeah, that's probably, see, I wanted to write. I wanted to write fiction. And so I thought of going into journalism, but then my first year English teacher in college said, well, but in journalism you have to do journalism. You have to go around and get news. Oh, I don't want to do that. I paged through the catalog and came up with Humanities. And I read the description of that. Oh, well, that sounds pretty good. I think I'll go into that. So I show up to register in Madison at the University of Wisconsin. And, you know, there's just another student behind the desk. Well, what do you want? What are you majoring in? I said, Humanities. She said, there isn't any such thing. So I was, well, what could you suggest that's close? And that's how I ended up in comparative literature.
What is your favorite movie?
The one that keeps coming back to my mind is La Strada. And it's just the complexity and the authenticity of the human experience that's portrayed there. I mean, I haven't seen it probably in the last 40 years, but I still remember it.
If you could tell President Obama one thing, what would it be?
Just one. Well, if it had to be one thing, see, the trouble is, the main thing I would tell him is just what virtually all the people who are on his side are telling him. Give up on this illusion of bipartisanship. You know, in Canada, the party that's out of power, but substantial, is called the loyal opposition. And the implication of that is that they will not unnecessarily impede the conduct of government. Well, by that criterion, the Republican Party is not loyal opposition, it's disloyal. And I think the rest of us outside of the United States are horrified at this. I mean, the respectable party should not act the way that party is acting. It's, you know, it's disloyal. Oh, that's it. But as I say, everybody's saying that. If I think he needs some people to talk to him about education.
How's that?
Well, you know, it's not that what he's proposing is necessarily bad, although some of it's questionable. It's just that it's so mediocre. I don't think he realizes that best practice isn't very good either. And that you may be able to make a tiny gain by just saying to teachers, look, here's the standards and you've got to teach harder. But, you know, it's essential to teach smarter. And teaching smarter is not essentially a matter of producing smarter people who are teachers. It's develop, my favorite word, knowledge. It's developing the knowledge, or as Homer Dixon calls it, ingenuity, which is not a personal trait, as he uses the term. It's really the supply of knowledge you can draw on in solving problems. And that's, education is deficient in this. There's no use yelling about we've got to teach improve their mathematics skills. We need more knowledge about how to get mathematical ideas to develop. And the sorry thing is there is quite a bit. There's an awful lot more knowledge available right now about that than is being applied. So, yeah, if we were sitting down over a beer, I'd probably say something like that.
And then 3 beers, what would you say? I'm kidding.
Good question, though.
I know. I'm going to add that for the next round. If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, having dinner with a dead person isn't really that, I mean, I don't find that appetizing, but with live people, I mean, I really do enjoy dinner with a huge variety of people. But when the chips are down, I'd have to say I really most want to have dinner with Marlene. Now that sounds peculiar because we, in fact, ate dinner together every day. But it's sitting in generally, it's food I fixed. We eat it and enjoy it, and the television's on, and Marlene's got her computer open and is working away, and so on. So we don't go out to eat very often, but when we do, I really enjoy it.
So romantic. I love that answer. I do. And he's quite the chef, as a side note, and quite the food critic and food connoisseur, as Angel called him, the foodie. Last question in this section. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, I think reminds me of that scene from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where after I get all my arms chopped off and so on, I say, let's call it a draw. Yeah, God would say, now I know you didn't believe in me, but I wasn't that sure about you either. So let's start a new page.
Let's call it a draw.
Yeah.
That's great.